Okay, guys, who remembers the turntables I popped on and one of them that had the Concord, the natural head shell socket, snapped off of the deck? Well, I'm going to show you now the end result of what these decks now look like. To say I am over the moon with the outcome of these is an understatement. To be totally honest, look at the difference. Look at the difference. A lot of blood and sweat, tears, swearing, you name it, happened during the building of these turntables. Now, this, as you can probably tell, is not a vinyl wrap. This has been coated. So the situation with these turntables were, wrapping them is one thing, removing the paint and then wrapping over the top was one thing, but it needed so much work completing, including the arm assemblies, that wrapping them was just going to be disguising certain areas and you'd see bits. And obviously with the way that I vinyl wrap, as I've shown you before, I cut around the edges with a surgical blade, including obviously around the adapter holes and everything you see, you still would have been seeing certain areas and parts where all the corrosion was hitting around all the really tight edges, including the pitch control. So the only option with these turntables was to have them bead blasted and then physically coated. So they've been powder coated. They look great. So we managed to get a colour very, very, very similar to the 1210, which I'm extremely happy with the outcome of. Now, these were covered in corrosion. They were covered in God knows what. There are some handprints and things on here, but it's nothing I can do to help that for the minute. Now, the graphics were applied on these about an hour ago now, so I'm letting them set, so I'm not going to be touching them in a hurry. But, so yes, so both turntables have both been bead blasted, as it's the nicest, safest method of removing the paint from these turntables. Sandblasting can be quite harsh. Bead blasting is the best way that I have found of removing the paint safely. So from outside to inside, a part underneath hasn't been touched apart from the sensor where the power supply would be sitting underneath. But it's very important when powder coating these turntables to anybody out there that is looking to do this, to ensure that when you give this to somebody, or if you're doing this yourself, make sure, okay, to pop bolts, screws, etc. in all the threads that you do not want coated, because if you coat over the threads without popping any bolts in place, what do you think is going to happen? It'll be an absolute nightmare getting any new bolts in. They may look beautiful, but then when you put the bolts back in, or goes to the point where you're trying to put things in, you run the risk of having bolts snap off in the threads where you're trying too hard in popping things back inside their original slots. So that's a little tip for anybody out there that is into powder coating. But yeah, all of the bolts were all sealed off with these. All the threads were all sealed off. Lovely. The platters, as you can see, now these have been polished. Their platters were beyond the point of even trying to polish them and just save the dots. They were in a very, very, very poor state. So what I decided to do on here, after running this past the customer, is again blast off the platters, get all the paint off the platter, off both of these, and polish them to an inch of their life. This is the best that I can get these. I'm very happy again with the outcome. Nice and shiny. And I think they go very well in the finished product with them. So even the platter edges and the sides, as you can see, I've actually physically vinyl wrapped the top of the platter like I would do of any wrap turntable, just to put some clarity between the polish and the middle section of the actual platter itself. But yeah, we've got fresh graphics, powder coated plimps, so inside and out looks exactly the same on both turntables, lovely and clean, nice and fresh. Underneath has been kept relatively standard to the degree we don't want anything underneath that's going to push the thickness underneath with the bases, so it's very important. We've got brand spanking new pitch slider units on both turntables. We've wanted to keep them as standard as possible. So we've got stock LEDs, SMD warm white pop-ups, my custom-made pop-ups, brand new green LED on the pitch. We've got brand new pitch control slider units, brand new pitch trims, brand new shader cloth, and replacement under shader, knob shaders as well. Even the plastic cap covers you see here, they've been polished too. I actually polished them, including the housings. The stems for the pop-up housings have been polished as well to the best that I can get them. Again, if you've seen what these were like before, they were pretty much unsavable. So the fact that I could actually do this to these is a massive improvement. The arm sections, these were interesting. So again, bead blasted, recoated. Assembly has been recoated, including the top section for the arm and the gimbal section. The bearings have been physically machine polished. Then, considering the state of how these were before, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous how these have come out. I mean, look at them, guys. Look at this. New speed selection switches for 33 and 45. Everything is just clean and ready to rock and roll. We've got replacement audio cables. We haven't gone for the upgraded cables because of the cost on these. Replacement audio cables to the same specification as the original turntables. These are really, really good quality, including genuine grounding cables. I had a new pair of genuine grounding cables that are the same length as the original cables, which is brilliant. We've got new power cables on these as well. Both turntables have been serviced. I'm over the moon. Bearing assemblies, the bearings were naffed on these. I mean, I could have blanked over them and then coated over the top, peeled it off and then kept the original bearing assemblies, but they were all beyond the point of saving. You had to be removed. So we've removed all the bearings, we've remilled the housings on them for the sockets, then we've actually popped new bearing assemblies in. So there are actually 2 bearings on each turntable now, one top and one bottom. So we've got brand new bearings on both of these. They run spot on, as you would expect. The head shell sockets, obviously, as you can see here, this is the only part that I actually couldn't save. It was such a shame. I've tried everything. It looks like someone's had a go at trying to get this out before, but it's just not coming loose. It's getting to the point where the actual cartridge itself is coming loose. So that's not going to happen. It's a shame because it's a bloody expensive cartridge. So this was the Qbert cart, so that's not coming off in a hurry. It was bad enough trying to remove the broken part of the socket from the arm, which didn't happen. It would not happen no matter what I tried. It was not coming out. So we've got a completely different tube on here. They've obviously replaced the socket for the end of this as well. It's just... yeah, I mean, night and day difference to how they were before. And like I say, if you haven't seen what these were like before, please check out the previous videos. But wow. I'm really, really looking forward to my customer getting these back. I can't, look, let's be realistic, I can't polish a turd, guys. But I can certainly make a difference. I can certainly make a difference to how they were before. I mean, that is ridiculous. So I've got another pair that I've obviously had coated at the moment. We need to decide on what we're doing with vinyl wrap for my customer. These were the other ones that are in a really bad state, as you would have all remembered, Kenny's turntables. So that's the next step, deciding what we're going to do with them. But that is one pair completed out of the 2 really bad pairs that I've had in recently. But they gave me a run for the money. I'll tell you, they really were hard work. I mean, just about every part that I touched on these that could be removed was either breaking, had snapped, or was just to the point of no return. I mean, someone had tried replacing the pitch slider units over on both of these turntables previously. The heat pads, solder pads themselves had too much heat on them. The pads were lifting. One of the pads was broken. One of the pads was non-existent on one of the pitch controls. The pop-up had tried to be changed on one of them, and that was burnt as well, the standard. The pop-up housings were an absolute state. It's just night and day difference. Extremely happy with the outcome now. Looking forward to my customer getting these back, and I thought I'd show you all the end result. So now it's on to the next pair. So we've got 2 pairs of really nice condition Mark IIs coming up next. So keep your eyes on the page. Let me know what you think. Give us your honest opinions, guys. I know not everyone's going to be a massive fan of these polished platters like this. It's not something that I offer before anyone turns around and goes, oh, how much for that, Jay? This was a... I've done this twice ever for 2 pairs of turntables. The amount of work that goes into getting this like this, because you don't just remove the original paint and just, you know, sit it under a polisher. It is that, but you sit there for a very long time just to get this result. So if anyone out there's thinking, oh, I'll strip the paint and do it myself, my advice to you would be source replacement platters, because this is a very, very lengthy task to get to this stage. And I'm only giving you that as complete honesty, all right, to anyone that wants to do this. It is a hard job to do, very time consuming. If you don't do it properly, you get it wrong. And if you get it wrong, it's game over for the platters. Too much pressure on the dots and you'll smooth the dots off, and you'll be in that horrible situation like with the Frankendex, like I explained before, where when you run your fingers over the dots, they don't feel sharp, they'll feel smooth. These are exactly the same as they were before the paint was removed. So they feel perfect and just had the paint removed and polished, right? That's how we want them. Right, let me know what you think. Be totally honest, guys. I don't want any nasty comments, though, please. I mean, it has taken me a month of Sundays to get these done for my customer. A lot of work goes into this. So even, look, if you genuinely are not a fan, just be honest, but don't be nasty. Okay, I don't want anybody being nasty. This has taken me a long time to do. It is a labour of love. And this is what the customer has asked for. And yeah, there we go. That's the only part I couldn't save. I was really hoping that I could solve this and get this removed for my customer, but because the cart's coming loose, it doesn't matter now. Right, there we go. I'll see you on the next video, guys.